All right, so what I'd like to do in this tutorial is if we're going slow or we're going fast, I'd like to essentially mess with this field of view option here so that our character zooms in or out. Do you see how it adds that like effect? Or if we get bumped, our camera, maybe we could do a camera shake or whatever. I could adjust this camera itself, but what I'm going to do is play with the Cinemachine package. So I'm going to go to Window here and go down to Package Manager, and I want to make sure that Cinemachine is installed. So you can go to Packages up here, Unity Registry, and scroll down. You could also just start typing CINE, and there's Cinemachine. Now you can see here mine is not installed, so I'm going to go ahead and hit install here. Let that install into my Pocket project. Yours might be installed already, depending on how your initial setup went. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. Now, if you're using Unity 6, when we go in here to create a Cinemachine camera, yours is just going to say Cinemachine camera. Because I'm using a little bit of an older version, we're just going to select virtual camera here. And like I said, yours would be called Cinemachine camera if you're using Unity 6. Now what happens is this virtual camera here sort of overlaps or supersedes this main camera here, right? Even though this is our main camera, the virtual camera here is going to take over because there's built-in stuff inside of this Cinemachine virtual camera. And if you click on your main camera now, you'll see it now has a Cinemachine brain. And this brain handles things in many of the other, like if you look at my game user experience design class, we get a little bit more in detail on this, but it has, these live events, things like that. Now let's go ahead and create an empty game object and just call this cameras, and then grab your main camera and your virtual camera and put them under this camera stack. Now the reason we do that is if we ever want to animate this, we can just select this camera here and do timeline. I get into a lot more detail with virtual cameras and stuff like that in our game user experience design class, but for now, we're just going to keep it pretty simple. All right, now that also kind of messed up my main camera's field, like view, because it's now using our virtual camera. So what I'm going to do is just zero out the X rotation and the Y rotation here. And let's kind of look at how this looks in our game. So we'll just do 16 by 9 for now. And I'm going to just press W, move this back, and rotate it down. Now the main camera's thing here is also, it's not really zeroed out. So that's zeroed out. And is this virtual camera zeroed out? 0, 0, 0. And so let's go ahead and just pull that back, sorry, one more time. And rotate this down. Remember I told you the virtual camera takes over the, so if you do pivot and local here, actually, you can, it'll point in the direction that the camera's facing. So this sort of, this virtual camera takes over. So I think that looks good. We're gonna have to do some tweaking after we play the game a little bit. So you can see we have this lens vertical field of view. This is what I'm going to adjust through code. So how do I want to do this? Well, when our camera is speeding up, to add a little tension, I'll have my camera zoom out. And then when we're slowing down, I'll have my camera zoom in. All right, so let's go into scripts here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to create a new C# script. And I'm just going to call this camera CTRL for camera controller. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and do a side-by-side with my code. And grab your level generator script. The reason for this is, do you remember this change ground movement speed? And we're using that speed amount to adjust the gravity of objects coming at us, right? So if I scroll out here, we use this speed amount coming in. So what I want to do is I want to access this script and I want to access the some of these speed properties here. So let's go back to our camera controller script here and let's create a variable that will allow us to access our level generator. All right, so for now, what I'm going to do is just modify this start method and just call it change camera field of view, or FOV. And what I want to do is I want this to be able to call, and I want to be able to pass in the speed amount, right? So what I can do is, just because I'm passing things around, I can grab this float speed amount. And inside of here, just pass that value in. Now this is its own for this script speed amount. This is different than this speed amount here. But what I can do is I can call this camera controller method from here. Or, it depends either way around, or I can pass it in from level generator. So actually, let's go the other way around. Let's make this public so that we can access this change field of view from our level generator. And then whatever we're doing in this change camera field of view, we'll be able to pass that speed amount into this script. All right, so let's create a couple variables. I want to do a kind of a minimum and maximum for this field of view here. Remember, this is what we're going to be controlling. So like at the default, it's at 60. So if we zoom in at like 20, you can see it like really zooms in on him. So maybe we want to go, let's see, 35 as he's running. And then if we zoom out as he's running fast, let's see, here's 60. Maybe we want to go move the camera in a little bit this way. And then we could zoom out to 80. Okay, so we'll do 80 and 30. So I'm going to go ahead and create two float variables. Remember, this is just a number with a decimal. And I'm going to call this one min. And we could always change this later in the inspector here. Min FOV. We'll just make these all caps. We're going to make that equal to 30F. Oops. And then we'll duplicate this, and I'm going to call this max FOV. And I think we did, was it 80? Actually, 90 looks cool too. Let's try 90 for this. And the next thing is I need to create a variable that's going to give me access to the Cinemachine camera here, this virtual camera. So we have Cinemachine virtual camera, and I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to name this just Cinemachine virtual camera with a lowercase c. If you're using Unity 6, I think it's just Cinemachine camera. So it would look like this. So let me comment this. If you're using Unity 6, it'll look like this, where you'll just say Cinemachine camera. And this might still work. I don't know if it's going to give us errors. Yeah, it's going to give us errors. And then you could name your variable something like this, where you say Cinemachine camera. So I'm going to comment this line out here because, and make sure to put that semicolon at the end. And then same thing with this one. And I'm just going to comment that out, and I'll write two lines. So this is going to always be for Unity 6 and the other one. So for example, what I want to do next is on start, I want to grab this component, the Cinemachine virtual camera, and load it inside of here, because I'm going to probably put the script right on top of there. So I'm just going to start typing out awake. I'm going to create that awake method. Grab my Cinemachine virtual camera here, and just say Cinemachine virtual camera here equals get component. And what's the camera the component I want to get? I want to get the Cinemachine virtual camera component. Now I'm going to duplicate this line again, comment it out, and then I'm going to show you that you're going to do something like this: Cinemachine camera, lowercase there, and then equals get component, and you're going to just change this out. This would be for Unity 6, because I know some of you are using Unity 6 in class already. And that's kind of the subtle differences in the problem when they upgrade like a version in the middle of a class. You start getting like, oh, now they don't call it that anymore, they call it this. And the reason for that is because remember what I told you, if you're using Unity 6, you're going to go to Cinemachine and you're going to select Cinemachine camera and not virtual camera. They changed that. But don't worry, we're not doing a ton with Cinemachine, just this. All right, so the next thing I want to do is, as our camera is sort of looking, I want to interrupt whatever state it's in by doing the zoom in or zoom out. And the way we can do that, if you remember, we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, and that's using an enumerator. If you forgot, that's completely okay. We'll go through it again now when we create the method and all this other stuff. But just kind of briefly, what enumerator does is it allows the ability to stop or start a process at a specific moment. And that returns the part of whatever information you want and gets back to the point whenever you need to back in the code. So when I say start or stop a process, it could be at the middle of a camera zooming or not zooming, because we're going to need that as we collect objects, like it'll zoom in or zoom out, or we get hit, things like that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just kind of select all of this, update, and just hit Control D to duplicate it. And I'm going to use this as sort of just sort of a base. So I'm going to write enumerator here. And then I'm going to change the method name from update to change. Oops, looks like I hit caps lock. Change FOV routine. And then what I'd like to do inside of here is, did it add the Cinemachine? Yeah. So make sure if for you it didn't. If you're getting errors here, make sure to add this using Cinemachine class at the top too. Now what I want to do is I want to store whatever our starting position is. Now by default, yours is probably like mine, and it says 60. So, and that's a float value, right? So we're just going to make another float variable, and we're going to call this start FOV, start field of view. And this is really whatever it is at default, which is that 60. So we're going to do that right off the bat. Then I'm going to access my Cinemachine virtual camera variable. I'm going to do dot lens, because remember, this is storing the, I believe this is it M lens? Let's see. Dot field of view. Now, I think this line of code will be different for you too. It won't be M lens, it'll be lens for Unity 6. So let me go ahead and duplicate this again if you're using Unity 6. And then this will be for Unity 6. Again, sorry, this is like, I'm trying to create this for 2 versions, and Cinemachine changed a little bit after Unity changed their Unity 6. So your line of code here is going to look like this. You can also do a little bit of searching online, but I believe that's it. Unity 6 float, start FOV, Cinemachine virtual camera lens, field of view. It's going to look like that. And what this is going to store is really just the number 60, which is this value here. Now, the reason we need this is I want to clamp the value for the zoom in or zoom out based on these values here, right? 30 and 90. So I'm going to create another variable here. I'm going to duplicate this. And I'm just going to call this target FOV. And this is where we want our camera's field of view to be at. And I'm going to use a mathf.clamp here. Mathf stands for math function, and .clamp allows you to clamp between 2 values with a starting value. So what I want is the start float value, or start field of view value here. And then I want the min value here. And then I want the, I guess I could type it and let it do it for us. Now the thing here is, this is going to store this value every time it's called, right? But we're not actually adjusting anything here, right? We're just clamping the value between these two. But what we really want to adjust is that start field of view value by that speed amount variable that we were talking about earlier. So what I can do is I can grab, let's pass in, let's do the same thing where we pass in the speed amount, right? Because remember, whenever you have a method, this variable here is local to this particular method. This speed amount is different than this speed amount, right? So whenever we're passing information, and this speed amount is only used in here. So I'm going to add this to speed amount here. And now, whenever we call this method, it's going to take whatever the starting field of view, which is 60, plus whatever that speed amount is being passed in, which could be minus or plus. And then we'll clamp that value based on these two, depending on where that starting position is. Now we could have it zoom in or out, but we need to know how long we want it to zoom for. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this serialized field here. I'm going to create another float. I'm going to call this zoom duration. And I'm going to just set this to 1F, and that's just going to be 1 second. So I want it to zoom in and out for 1 second. So how are we going to lerp or move between these two positions, right, for our camera? Lerping makes a smooth transition between the two. Well, we can use something that we learned before, which is a while loop. And what we can say here is we can say, well, we have elapsed time. So let's create a variable called elapsed time. We're going to set that to 0. Okay. So while the time that has elapsed, which is currently set to 0, is less than zoom duration, which is this 1 second here. So while 0 is less than zoom duration, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the time of elapsed time, because we don't, we can't just set it to 0, otherwise this while loop will run forever. So I'm just going to say plus equals time.delta time. Remember, this is kind of like adding clock time. Like, so it's going to be counting up, right? So 0 plus whatever this value is going to make this sort of a counter or timer. We've done this in our taxi game as well. So as long as elapsed time is less than zoom duration, we run this while loop, right? And then this will go up, and then this will again, and that'll kick us out of this while loop. So while this is going on, what do we want to do? Well, I want to essentially adjust that. And remember, we made 2 of these here, right? This, let's see. Remember, we have, if you're using Unity 6, you want to copy this line here, right? This field of view here. What I'm going to do is copy this one. So what we're going to do here is while the time is elapsing, we're going to lerp between the start and target field of view over the amount of time we're zooming. So I'm just going to say equals, and I'm going to put this on a new line so that you can see it a little bit better. Math F, remember dot lerp, and what lerp does again is it just smoothly transitions between 2 values. And the 2 values we want to smooth transition over is the start, the target, and then the third value is how long do we want it to smoothly transition between those 2 values? Well, you probably guessed it, zoom duration. Actually, what we want to do is elapsed time over zoom duration. And what this will do, this will give us always a value between 0 and 1, up to 100%. And because we never want to do sort of math like this inside of we always want to have the option or some sort of logic built into code that we can always tweak. I'm just going to cut this and then just make another variable. We'll just call this t. We'll make it equal to elapsed time and zoom duration, and we'll plug this in there. And that cleans up our code a little bit. It makes it a little bit more readable. So I would run through this code, comment everything on your own. Now, the IEnumerator is waiting for us to return something like a number or value so that it can stop the interruption. So what we're going to do is after all of this logic, this condition here is met, right? Elapsed time is no longer equal to zoom. We'll just exit out of this. So we'll do yield, return, and then just do null. That means we don't want to return anything. So now when we save that, I'm going to hit Control Alt Enter here, clean up my code. That should get rid of any sort of errors that we have in this change field of view routine. Now, one last thing I can do, and this just assures for quality assurance, like as this is running, outside of this while loop, once it returns null, we can reset everything back to this target field of view value here, which is all this stuff here. And this is again this is like kind of a safety net or contingency. All we say is we can just do something like this, where we say Cinemachine mlens equals target field of view. The Unity 6 version is this here. This is for Unity 6. Again, the only way that you're really going to get good at coding is if you kind of go in there, tweak it, comment it, read it, take notes, instead of just copying the code. And because really when it comes to learning about coding, you're like, oh, that's what a variable does. That's what a list does. But getting in there and sort of adding to it and problem solving, which we really do later in classes, is, how do you problem solve this if you want to take an advanced programming class with me? All right, the last thing you probably noticed if you've been doing a lot of the coding and really if you enjoy this kind of stuff is we never actually launched this method, right? It's grayed out. So we don't even call this one yet, and we will eventually. But so let's go ahead and just say start coroutine, right? And within this coroutine, I'm just going to call this. And what am I going to do? I'm going to pass in, let me delete this word that says float here, this speed amount variable. Now the speed amount variable here is the same as that one. See how when I double click that, it highlights this? So we're going to start this coroutine the second this is called. It's going to run all of this logic here, which changes the field of view, right, for our camera. And we're constantly passing in that speed amount value all the way through. So let's save that. All right, so let's grab the name of our class, camera controller. Let's go back to our level generator. Because remember, we've done all this really hard work, but we never actually call this. And where we want to call this is actually in our level generator, right? Remember, our level generator controls, the spawn positions, the moving ground, all this stuff. So at the top here, I'm going to just, I don't know, maybe I'll grab this one here and I'll make it a variable that gives me camera controller, and then I'll call it camera controller with a lowercase c here. We'll save that out. Remember, we have that minimum move speed, all this good stuff inside here that we can use. So remember this change ground movement speed here, and then we have a speed amount here. And this adjusts the speed, and we actually use that to adjust the gravity. Well, this is where we'll change our camera's FOV. So what I can do is I can just say, okay, here's my camera controller. And then remember we made this a public variable. That's why I'm jumping back here, public variable. I can just say camera controller dot, and then you should see change camera FOV. And then what do I want to do? I just want to pass in that speed amount variable that's also controlling our physics. And let's save that. All right, so back here, I'm going to go ahead and maximize it. Select your level generator. You should now have a field where it's looking for your camera controller. I don't like that it's separated that out. Maybe I'll end up going back and typing camera controller. And it's looking for an actual, let's see. Oh, we need to attach to our virtual camera the camera controller script. And now when we go to our level generator, it should allow us to select and drop that in there. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Now, when I press play, maximize this a little bit. See, we're getting hit. See, select our virtual camera. You can see the lens is moving slightly, but it's not moving a great deal. It's only doing, like, that's 52. Let's see. Right, so back in our camera controller, because it's very, very subtle, let's give people the option to like really increase and you might want to do this over time, right? Like later levels, it gets more intense, the gameplay. So let's add a zoom speed modifier variable, and we'll just use this to like calculate against the current speed amount and stuff like that. So, and then now inside of here, on our camera controller, which is on our virtual camera, you can say, okay, I want to make this, twice as fast. And zoom duration might be too long too, but we'll look at that in gameplay. All right, so let's grab this. And all we have to do is remember this start FOV plus speed amount. This is what's actually adjusting that target field of view. So we could just multiply it here. And I forgot the multiplication symbol. And then I'll put this on the next line just so you can see all the code here. So let's save that. And actually, let's just make this a little drastic. I'm going to make it 10. Just so you can really see it inside the view, like when we play our game. You can see how it really moved out there. And you can see the value now. I'm at 30. I'm really zoomed in here. But if I get that health variable, and again, you might want to tweak these values. Maybe 30 is way too close. See, now it's moving out a little. Moving out even more. And like I said, 1 second might be too much for speed duration. So we're just really tweaking this endless runner. Yeah, I mean, it even just kind of takes him out. Like that's how drastic that in amount is. So we're really going to have to play with that value. And the way you could do that is you just look at this lens for vertical field of view. It's way too close. So maybe we want it to be, maybe the lowest we want is it to be 60 because we could keep him in frame. And then we also want it to follow him. So we'll get to that later, maybe another video. And then the max field of view maybe could be 150. Maybe we go like that. And then the zoom duration, we can make it 0.5. And we save that and we press play now. Now we're down to 60. We're zoom out. Yeah, I made it to, and remember we clamped that amount too. So I can't zoom in any more than this. So here we are. Anyway, you get the idea. I'm also noticing that this is not updating properly, and that's because our start coroutine is always running. I just want to stop it when it's recalled. So stop all coroutines. And what this will do is this will stop anything from running, and then when we go to call it again, it'll reset it. So let's set our lens field of view to back to 60. Oops, yeah, there we go. And then let's see how that goes. We might even have to just change that target field of view a little bit, but let's see here. Yeah, so now you see how it stays at 60? And 60 might be pretty bad for a min. I'm going to grab my camera and just move it way out like this. Let's see if that changes anything. Sorry, I want to make sure that this is at 30. Sorry, I'm going to make sure that I'm probably going to wrap up this video now. I know it's a very long video, and I don't want to. See, we drop down to 30. When we hit those, it's going much closer. All right, that's it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it wasn't too confusing. I just want to let you know that this is used briefly that this way of lerping between two values that's in my camera controller. So I don't know why I went over there. This right here is a pattern that's used all the time. I didn't invent it, and it's used quite often in code. So once you wrap your head around this, you'll probably use this pattern over and over again if you're interested in doing lerping for code.